An optical viewfinder, tactile mechanical feel, an enormous library of vintage glass is why I use Leica. So why did I fly to Tokyo to trade an M10R for a 10-year-old DSLR? Perhaps Nikon's most hated camera ever. Can't be a good deal, right? But in art and in life, there's no such thing as a fair trade. Hello, I'm Jack, scientist and street photographer, and there are 6 reasons I bought a Nikon DF in 2025. Reason 6 is its size, one of the smallest full-frame DSLRs ever made. It's even smaller than my Nikon ZF when adapting vintage lenses. Nikon's attempt to shrink the DF was way ahead of its time, but buying a 10-year-old digital camera is like trying to sell a Leica, fraught with risk. That's why I flew to Tokyo, a city with the most expansive used camera selection in the world. I'll show you how I navigated the whole trade-in process, the 3 lenses I bought for the DF, and now that it's gone, what I'll miss most about my Leica M10R. Reason 5 why I bought the DF is its price. Still expensive in 2025, but nowhere near its original asking price. That high price tag was one of the reasons it got so much hate. Everything wrong with photography to some. Now that I've got it in hand, it's more rugged than retro. Clearly a DSLR and not a film camera, especially in black. Even after 10 years of depreciation, it sells for more than a used Z6. Its retro charm has made it a collectible. I won't lose too much if I ever decide to sell it, but the same can't be said for Leica. And while Leicas do hold their market value, getting that high price tag in a private sale is very difficult. That's how I ended up on my way to Nakano Broadway. Just a 10-minute train ride by the Chuo line from JR Shinjuku. Nakano is featured in every Japan watch shopping guide on the internet. A retro weathered vibe in and around the station, and into the Broadway, Fujiya cameras tucked away down one of those side streets. Fujiya camera has been around for decades, but their website doesn't rank on Google unless you're in Japan and you need a browser extension to translate the Japanese to English. Why didn't I go to Map Camera in Shinjuku instead? Their trade-in prices tend to be a little bit lower and there's less transparency. With Fujiya, you can get an estimate of the trade-in value all online, and as a tourist, all I needed was my passport and the gear. Shitatori to kokan and Eigo wa dekimasu ka was all I needed to get the ball rolling, and the whole process took 20 minutes. There's also an extra 15% bump in trade-in value if I buy something in store with that credit. And if the gear is used, Fujiya give a 6-month Japan warranty. But before I could say goodbye to my Leica, there was one more stop. Reason 4 why I bought a DF is the manual focus experience. Unlike other Nikon DSLRs, the DF lets you flip up the aperture index or AI coupling pin to use pre-AI lenses. There's even an option in the menu. For AI converted AI or AIS lenses, that pin connects to the aperture ring of the lens. Once you program in the maximum aperture in the non-CPU lens menu, you can accurately meter and record the EXIF data for every manual lens. Something the Leica M10R or any mirrorless camera while adapting vintage lenses can't really do. Mirrorless cameras with 100% punch zoom-in magnification through the EVF are technically more accurate for manual focus, but you are staring at a screen, so it loses that sense of immediacy. The arrows and dot in the bottom corner, together with seeing directly through the lens via the optical DSLR viewfinder, gives 2 points of focus confirmation. It's really quite accurate, so for manual focus, the DF provides a beautifully smooth, unobtrusive experience. The Nikon Museum is located in a quiet and understated part of the city. A 15-minute train ride on the Shonan Shinjuku line from Shinjuku Station to Nishi-Oi Station, then a short 5-minute walk to a minimal, elegant Nikon headquarters. Their museum's free to enter, located on the ground floor next to their in-house Konbini Lawson, and the entire history of Nikon is on full display. What struck me the most isn't the breadth of innovation and activities Nikon's been involved with, but instead the depth of their work in optics. It's dizzying how many versions and derivations they've made of every single focal length, and reason 3 why I bought the DF is this enormous archive of lenses. Not just the manual focus lenses, but also autofocus f-mount lenses. On mirrorless, there's the FTZ2 adapter to get equal or better autofocus performance with those f-mount lenses, but you'll lose autofocus with almost all of the AFD lenses that don't have the focus motor integrated into the lens. The DF gives me access to all of the f-mount lens lineup, both manual and autofocus, although the autofocus performance is not great and very lens dependent. But again, the DF is replacing my Leica M10R, which has no autofocus whatsoever, so even when it's a little slow, I find it to be accurate enough with a bit of fine tuning. I took a little too long looking at all these lenses in the museum before I headed back. It feels naive to be sentimental about gear. How can this camera possibly mean as much to the next owner as it did to me? To trade all those memories, all that emotion, it doesn't feel like a fair exchange. Reason 2 why I bought the DF is because of its controls and button layout, specifically how similar it is to my Nikon ZF. I can use the DF and ZF interchangeably with the same muscle memory. The DF actually has more buttons, control, and grip than the ZF. The PASM controls switched to the right, the exposure comp switched to the left, but there's that familiar shutter speed dial, ISO dial, and same auto ISO settings in the ZF. The whole camera is very clicky and satisfying to use. The shutter is very quiet for a DSLR of its time, especially when you set it to quiet mode. The rear command dial I use for shutter speed when shooting manual, and the front command dial is a little different. I use it for aperture control, but it's not a big deal because I plan on shooting with manual lenses on the DF most of the time, which do have their own aperture rings. I finalized the trade, said goodbye to the Leica, and hello to the DF with 3 f-mount lenses. The first lens I've talked about on the channel before. The 28mm f1.8G. It's very underrated relative to the f1.4 version, which is way bigger, heavier, and costs a lot more. The f1.8 is bright, sharp enough, and light enough for everyday carry. And a fast 28mm is a lens still missing from Nikon Z mount, so this lens plays double duty. The second lens was the one I knew I wanted from the start. It's the one that came bundled with the DF originally, although I couldn't find that special edition version, the 50mm f1.8G. After all these years at Fujiya, there was still a brand new copy in box. It's a great throw around pancake-ish lens with autofocus I'll use on the DF. The last lens I bought is also the most expensive f-mount lens I now own. Like the DF, this lens had its fair share of critics. The autofocus is slow and not very accurate. Optics riddled with aberrations. The legendary 58mm f1.4G. But at f1.4 it gives a magical look. Especially when paired with reason 1 why I bought the DF, its sensor. This 16 megapixel sensor, inherited from Nikon's top of the line at the time, D4, it has amazing low light performance for its time and really is the reason the DF is still relevant all these years later. Very, very clean when exposed to the right. ISO 12800 still really usable. But how little noise there is in the image isn't what I like the most about it. It's how forgiving it looks with older lenses, a very pleasant organic rendering, and I love how it meters the light and the colors it produces. The images have a more timeless look, the files are really easy to edit, and the amount of dynamic range is all I need and more even in 2025. And this is why I think Leica shooters in particular should take a really close look at a Nikon DF. I previously thought the Leica M shooting experience was unique, but the DF ticks all the same boxes. The OVF and manual focus assist tools are more accurate and just as fun as the rangefinder patch. The legacy of f-mount glass is every bit as compelling as m-mount lenses. Plus, you get the bonus of autofocus if you wanted and amazing low light performance. I'm having just as much fun and more importantly the same type of mechanical tactile experience shooting on the DF as I did on my Leica. Well, it's not my Leica anymore. The one thing I'll miss the most about that Leica experience, its clarity of purpose. All the effort it takes to focus and compose through the rangefinder hints at the truth about this medium. Photography is the ultimate unfair trade. All that time, money, and effort to create something ultimately subjective. But it's all worthwhile when we finally catch it. My Leica was never meant to be a collectible. I took hundreds of thousands of shots on it, and if the next owner loves it as much as I did, it'll be more than a fair trade. My Leica M10R is gone, but I'm still a Leica shooter, now exclusively a monochrome Leica shooter, which is an experience that is still unmatched. But the ZF's dedicated black and white dial does come close. Do you really get better black and white photos when you shoot on a dedicated monochrome camera? I'm Jack. This is my bokeh therapy.